And we are live. We are live to the rest of the world, whatever is left of it. Hi, thanks for coming here. Max here, host. I hope you guys are doing great. So today I'm going to talk about a topic that's been in the news for about a couple of days, which is Donald Trump and the immigration things that's happening in Canada right now, the non-existent border of between United States and Canada that I want to talk about today, because it's a very, I think when Donald Trump was talking about that the border is not secure between the United States and Canada, I think he might be right. And I just want to talk. I essentially want to talk about just how greatly the border is and how insecure it is, and how seems that right now things are changing right now, to say the least, before Donald Trump pulls the plug and is going to impose a 25% increase in our tariffs. Not to mention a significant decrease of the US dollar, because I run my podcast and sometimes I have to pay vendors in US dollars, especially StreamYard. And when my bill basically goes up because StreamYard using US dollars, and not just StreamYard, but my own business as well, when the US dollar is significantly higher than the Canadian one, you start to, I almost say panic, but you just found it a little uncomfortable, if you will. So today's episode, oh, and I got my Rumble hat here, so this is good. I got it from at the AGM, the UCP AGM, 2-3 weeks ago. That Rumble one there, Rumble, because I'm on Rumble now. Apparently, oh, I want to see if this thing is broadcasting on Rumble. Just a sec. Should be. Oh, it is broadcasting now. It is live. That's fantastic. Okay, so we're live on all platforms right now. I'm on Twitter, on Facebook. No, not Facebook, but YouTube. And I think I'm good for now. Sorry, I have to test this thing out before moving forward, because I have a glitch with my internet connection here. But my webcam is working, so that's good. So today I'm going to talk about the border between United States and Canada. The pathetic, unexistent border between the United States and Canada. This is actually a picture that I took from a screenshot. No, this is from Google Street View. This on the left side is the United States, and on the right side it's Canada. And in the border is just literally just plain out field, like in the middle of nowhere. I think this is in North Dakota, if I remember correctly. But anyways, this is going to be a touchy subject, and if you own a business which deals with with US dollars, I think that the situation we're dealing right now is touching a lot of people like me and other guys, myself. So I want to talk about this as well too. So the topic of the subject: a pathetic, non-existent border between the United States and Canada. Hope this video doesn't get me banned on YouTube, but anyways, at this point, who cares? Alrighty, so let's talk about this thing here. So the border between US and Canada. So first of all, if you're not subscribed to the to the Telegram, to the Rumble channel, please do so. I'm basically on Rumble most of these days now, but I'm pushing all platforms right now because I know that YouTube is censoring my clips now because they don't like freedom, I guess. So if you wanna double check on Rumble, it seems like a good platform up until now. Haven't been any issues, and most of the issues that I got are essentially being addressed. So that's good. And some people tell me that I'm late when I do my lives. I'm like, well, I'll do my best. And I said at 7:30, but most of my time is like 7:34, 7:32. Anyways, enough nonsense. I want to talk about this border thing because it touches me personally. Because it's more like money involved here. So why this? So this is when we talk about the table of contents. Why this talk? The U.S. border, Mexico border, U.S. Canada border, and examples of non-secure border locations and potential resolutions. So the point that I want to address is that when it comes to the border, well, the Americans they made the little border between United States and Mexico. That's fine. What I found surprisingly is how different the northern border is relative to the southern border. In other words, if you look at how the southern border is, it's way different from the northern one. Even though the future Trump administration has identified the border between U.S. and Canada as a potential trouble source, which is we will discover a true thing. But at the same time, I think that at this point of time, we have to address the situation and say, what can we do about this thing, right? Because this is going to be something that Canadians will have to face on it. And I know there are some people in the United States watching this stream as well too. So and they know what the dealing are right now, but I just want to show you just how different both both borders are between each other, and what can you do to address the situation to make it protect and what we'll have to deal with eventually. So what is talk? Well, because Donald Trump is basically saying, oops, skip my slides. So basically, Donald Trump is basically saying that, well, guys, if you don't put a proper border between the United States and Canada, then we're going to charge you a 25% tariff on all the things that come from your country to the United States. That's the rationale. Of course, the media panic and say that Donald Trump is a freak and everything, yada, yada, yada. We can argue with that, but regardless that there was the border between the United States and Canada for a long time was sort of like a trusted border. Like there were like two countries, pretty much like buddy buddy, and they all have their own countries. They all have their own borders, and each country sort of protected their border to what they think is best. And because we are buddy buddies between each other, then we want to trust each other. So that's the rationale of a very relaxed border between the United States and Canada. Over time and after 9/11, that thing changed significantly. Um, I know people who were basically going from one side of the country, like if you're in Quebec, on a show little town here in my clips here. This is a border town, so half the city is United States and the other was in Canada. So if you want to see your neighbor down the streets, your neighbor will be the United States. You don't need a password to that. Back in the days, it wasn't a requirement, but now with 9/11, everything changed. And now with Donald Trump being on power and imposing a tariff on goods sales sold from Canada to the United States, is going to be a game changer. And I think that's too important and too great to not talk about it. And also, why I'm talking about this thing is because of little Justin, little potato. Right now, our value, the Canadian dollar is actually going down the toilet on this graph here. This is a graph that I pulled together that I found on xe.com. Xe.com is a website that allows you to track currencies, and this is going to track the Canadian dollars relative to the US dollar and myself, in the United States dollars. So as a reminder, so I have to deal with some vendors and some suppliers, and they charge me in US dollars. So now instead of paying like, I just give you a number just for the fun of it. Let's say that I'm paying $200 US. That will basically uh, match around $300 Canadian. Now it's like 350. So it's an extra $50 that I have to pay from on my business main account to do it, which is insane. Now, and that is because in the outside world, from the outside world, Canada is not being seen as a serious country because of little potato and part, right? Well, just little potato and sellout thing, if you will. So this is too great to not be for us to not talk about it. So that's Donald Trump in here, and that's the dollar going down the tubes. So that's what we need to talk about this thing in particular. And also because for those of you who are not aware of, I am an immigrant. I'm living in this country for 23 years, and I know the challenges when it comes to immigration because I lived through that personally, and I know what it looks like. And there's something going on with the current state of immigration that is not sustainable. And I think at this point of time, we as Canadians going to have to face the reality and not be shy about not talking about this thing. That this is unsustainable. The level of immigration that's been jammed the roads by the Liberal government in Ottawa is not sustainable at all. Cannot be sustained. And a lot of people, like I think in Northern Perspective as well too, they were talking about immigration as well, and they're basically saying that look, we're not against immigration. I am myself, I'm a product of immigration. It's just that it has to be sustainable. Back in the days, 20 years ago, there were standards when it comes to immigration. Now if you weigh 400 pounds, you have a massive beard, and with no hair on your, and if you're bald with 400 pounds with a massive bird, you can say that you're a chick, and after you go, welcome to Canada. So there's no standards whatsoever right now. Back in the day, there were a lot of standards when it comes to immigration. Just FYI. So why I'm doing this. I'm going to talk about this thing another time about immigration process, but I don't know. Let's for now. We're going to focus on the non-existent border here. So the U.S. border with Mexico. They're very different between the border with Mexico and the border with Canada are each other very different. So what you need to understand is that the border with Mexico is it's a very arid climate, like very hot temperatures because they're essentially by the equator border, right? It's covered by four U.S. states, which are California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And the cherry on top is that California is officially helping the influx of illegal aliens. And by the way, within this document, I always talk about illegal aliens. And at this point of time, I just don't shy away from that particular term at this point. I think we can all agree that in order to win the culture war, we're going to have to use this term illegal aliens. We're going to talk about that in a future slide. But I just talk about illegal aliens because I borrowed the wording from the US side of things. But basically, at this point, as Canadians, we're gonna have to embrace ourselves and not be ashamed of saying those things. So California, if you're aware of this, is basically facilitating the influx of illegal aliens by simply declaring California as a refugee sanctuary. So if you're a illegal alien if you want to seek refuge within the United States, the best place to be at this point is California because of Gavin Newsom. But there are 4 states, right? And the biggest state is Texas. They go from west to the east. Okay, New Mexico as well. I think they have a very relaxed attitude, but no, it's nowhere near California. And it has a high influx of people from that border because of weather and topographical conditions. So we don't over there in Mexico, they don't have -50 like we do in Alberta or in Saskatchewan, right? So basically, if somebody is affected by the heat and they dry out and they suffocate, whatever, they end up at the hospital, whatever, then we're going to potentially suffer from suffocation. But they're not going to be, those people will not die off from cold temperatures. They are going to die from, I don't want people to die, that's not the point. But if somebody ever crosses the border between the United States and Mexico, chances are they will be dehydrated in such degree. Okay. And because of the terrain, because it's a very arid condition, very climate, yes, there are some valleys there and there, but it's not like a rough tundra terrain like we have in Canada, right? So it's very rough. It's a very flat-ish surface. There's desertic surface, and it's hot. That's what the U.S. border with Mexico looks like. I'm gonna look at the map later on. Also, I'm not less sure of this statement, but back in the days, most of the illegal aliens came from Mexico or other countries that went through Mexico. So there was a huge chunk of people who only spoke Spanish. And as you are probably aware of, Spanish is the unofficial second language of the United States. Obviously, this is something that I found weird. But if you speak Spanish in the United States, especially along the U.S. border, you will get along very well. Okay. At the same time, because of that, if you're a DHS agent or working with ICE, the you're gonna what you want is essentially agents and border patrol agents that are either bilingual, i.e., who are be able to speak English and Spanish to in order for be able to talk to those people in a more effective manner. Like saying, in that way, you can if you see somebody from coming from the border, you can actually say something like, no, you can actually say, no, este es el borde con Estados Unidos, tiene que irse de acá, si no lo vamos a arrestar y yada, yada, yada. First time speaking Spanish for a long time. Sorry for that. But anyways, so that is what makes the U.S. border quite unique on its own. And also, let's face it, the border between the United States and Canada, again, care to guess which border is the smallest relative to Canada? Obviously, Canada has a very large border relative to the one with Mexico. Okay. So this is what it looks like. So you got all these states in there. You got so this is Mexico on the south side here, on the just under um, the blue line here. So this is California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Okay, and this is Mexico. The red here is just Mexico. Okay. Now I want to talk about the border with Canada. With Canada. So, and it's significantly larger than the one with. It's significantly larger than the border with Mexico. It's covered by 12 U.S. states, and these are Washington, Washington, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Michigan, what's Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. That's from the U.S. side of things. It's covered by 5 Canadian provinces: British Columbia, Alberta. Oh, there's a Manitoba. Sorry for that. Should be said Manitoba here. not Minnesota, spelling error there. Ontario, QC, Quebec, and New Brunswick. Because of the how the topography is between United States and Canada, it's not a flat surface. You have a very non-uniform terrain, which is in some areas of the country you're gonna have the Great Lakes, you're gonna have some farmland somewhere on the in the prairies. If you're in Manitoba, Ontario, these are gonna see the lakes and some forests. So it's not like a the possible. And if you're in Ontario as well, you're gonna touch the Canadian lakes, the Great Lakes. And obviously, if you want to go from one place to another, you have to basically at this point put a boat somewhere and trying to go across the lake, which is very extraneous and very hard if you want to talk about this thing. So the U.S. border between United States and Canada, it's very unique on its own because the topography is not the same across the border, right? If you're in Maine, for example, you're gonna see the Appalachian Mountains, and this is like a very rough, rocky border climate landscape with lots of rocks and lots of forest and mosquitoes as well. Yeah, if you're in the prairies, like in this case Alberta, you're gonna be hit by -50 in the prairies. So if you're in winter time, chances are they're gonna die from frostbite if you're not careful enough. And we're gonna talk about in some locations in the prairies as well. So basically, the protection is being provided by harsh weather conditions. I said mosquitoes as a joke and rough terrain, but mosquitoes is true. And I will say this is I will say that most of the illegal aliens they come from Africa, Middle East, or India. And one of my slides are gonna talk about one of my clips I just pulled off the internet. There were some people from Somalia that were going through Manitoba as well. I think the town is Emerson. If you're in Manitoba, Emerson, Manitoba. So basically, this is like a small town just across the border with the United States, and it's bordering with North Dakota and Minnesota, which is kind of unique. Because Canada and United States, historically speaking, were two countries that were like buddy buddy within each other, right? So when I was working with telephone systems back in the days, when I was just given an understanding, this is like a side note. When I was working in the telephone industry, setting up phone system and stuff, one of my supervisors basically told me that Canada and United States were two countries that were so well interconnected together that it basically behave as its own phone system, even though they're two different countries. So that level of interconnection is also and trust also reflects to the U.S. border in general because nobody thought that some people want to jump from Canada to United States or vice versa when it's -40 outside. All it took is essentially Donald Trump saying that we're going to deport you, and all those people jump on Roxham Road. And trust me, Roxham Road is just one tiny spot. What you need to understand is that Roxham Road is just one pass between the United States and Canada, but there are like a bazillion Roxham roads within Canada. I want to talk about those things. This is the focus on this top of this presentation as well. So there was some sort of non-written rule that Canada and United States they cannot trust each other. Now this trust is being eroded by little Justin because now he's not doing her job, right? And implementing a such border in Canada, like the United States, with all those fences and stuff, is very hard to do because of how the topography, how the topology between those countries really is. It's not a flat well, it's not a flat surface like in Mexico, and it's almost like a very desertic climate. We don't have this thing in Canada. If you're in Quebec, for example, you're going to see a lot of humidity, lots of mosquitoes. If you're going to go to the prairies, you're going to see lots of cows and farmland everywhere. That's the border. So this is, my friends, the border between the United States and Canada. As you can see, you have all the northern provinces here. Okay, so you got BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. I got it right. Yes. Ontario, Quebec. People say, it's Quebec. No, Quebec. Sorry for that. And then on the south side, you got Washington State, Idaho, Montana. When I talk about Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York State. Can't see here because it's too small, but basically here we see Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. Oh, I forgot New Brunswick. Sorry for that. Brunswick in Canada. Well, nevertheless, so this is the Canada border. If you see on my previous slide here, which is all red here, is because this is a picture I took on the internet about the climate temperatures and that sort of thing within Canada, within the North American continent. So basically, what you see red is because it's like very hot, right? Understandable. But if you go to United States side of things, like if you go to Canadian side of things, this is all cold, like minus cold, level of cold, right? I can say, oh, it's minus cold. Well, that's Canada, right? That's Canada level of cold. Wasn't joking. This is cold. So this is in fact a map of the climate patterns within Canada. So I'm just gonna pull that out for you guys, just so you can see what's going on here. Just gonna present, share screen. I'm gonna share screen number 2. All right, so this is the picture I was talking about here. I'm gonna resize this a little bit here. So this is essentially the climate patterns here in Canada. So what we have here in Canada is mostly continental, subarctic, continental. That's the climate we have here. And that corresponds to what we have here in North America itself, right? If you want to take a look, it's on the slides, but this is what the climate looks like. So everything that's in green, turquoise-ish, that is essentially what it calls subarctic, continental subarctic climate. And this is continental. I have it on my slides, but it's another subcontinental. Anyways, subcontinental. I just remember the slide. Okay, continental subarctic. That's the name of the climate that we have here in Canada, along with Manitoba down to New Brunswick. Continental subarctic, which is essentially tundra-like climate, you know. So the verdict, the U.S. border, the border between Canada and the United States is not monitored nor protected. And we're going to talk about it. So you have to understand that Canada is the longest border in the world, which is like 55,000 miles. I don't use kilometers, by the way. I use miles here. Um, so the question is how Canada will protect, and seems that with little Justin, little Justin cannot protect the U.S. border effectively because he is whatever, not a prime minister, but that's not a subject. But anyways, the border is not secure at this point of time, and because of this trust relationship that we historically had between both countries, chances are that because of that we didn't have like the proper way of security wasn't a concern that much because of a trust relationship that both countries had. But now the United States realized that the northern border is also a problem and that needs to be tackled, right? So in this slide, I'm going to demonstrate a few things a few places that are not necessarily secure. So these are places that I've been personally. Okay, so this is example number one. So this is in Quebec. It's called Wreck Island, Stansted, Derby Line in Vermont. Okay, so this is on the south side of the province on Highway 55. And this is a town. There were two towns. It's almost like Lloydminster. If you've ever been in Lloydminster, the history of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, there were two cities together. They were independent from each province. So you have, let's say that you have Lloydminster, Alberta, and Lloydminster, Saskatchewan. Over time, those cities began to grow independently and became so large that eventually merged together and became Lloydminster, Alberta. This is kind of like that, but not quite. So this city here is called Stansted in Quebec, and can't see on the map here, but essentially there's a road on the south side here on Highway 141. It's called the Can USA Road. And this is in fact one of the road I was saying that if you're in the United States, if you go in Canada, you go across the street, United States. Your neighbor face to you is United States, or vice versa. So the people who lived there in that place didn't pay attention to that subject that much, but now I know that since the pandemic, I know a lot of people from Quebec trying to escape the provincial government from being tyrannical. So what ended up going is that they ended up going to Stansted to cross the border and then never lived, and they never went back. And they never came back again to Canada. People here in Canada who were born here in Canada, they used that town to escape Canada. So back in the days during this pandemic, that's what happened. So this is what it looks like. I'm gonna show you a little video that I just gathered on YouTube. If you want to take a shot at this, I think his name is Jay Scott, I believe. He's on a run channel, very technical channel. I'm gonna show some clips, and this guy is basically gonna explain this specific road I was referring to, the Can US border, Can USA road. Chemin Canusa, what's it called in French? Because it's in Quebec. What do you expect? Oh, I might have a problem. Just a second. Sorry for that. Wasn't expecting that at all. So I'm just gonna re-upload the video here. Video file. I'm just gonna send.
Not allowed to cross this road because this is the town of Stansted, Canada. On the other side of the street is Derby Line, USA, and the border between the two countries runs right down this, Rue Canusa. For the local residents, that can be inconvenient.
I lived here all my life, so 63 years. Today, you cannot cross over the line and visit your neighbors like years ago. If you want to cross, you have to report at customs. You know, I used to cross every day. Now I probably cross once a week because I come down to the post office over here. To go through the border, basically, they ask you a passport. They go inside. I guess they look at if you have a record or not. They look at your registration of your car. About a couple minutes and you're gone through. I'm a dual citizen, so I'm American and Canadian, so it's easier.
This is a place where the idea of a border as a solid, easy to understand line gets a little bit fuzzy. The road doesn't run at exactly the same angle as the border, not precisely. The official line is that this is Canada and that's the USA, but both countries' maps show the road as being entirely in the US just here and entirely in Canada up there. The houses are definitely in separate countries, but the road, it's not quite as clear. And in practice, if I was driving, I'd be okay. Even on that side of the road, I am considered to be still in Canada, as long as I don't stop and walk up to an American house. It's fair to say that there's a little bit of leniency here if you're just nudging the border by a few centimetres, or if you're on that side, a couple of inches. Centimetres, or if you're on that.
I'm just going to show you something. In here,
Little bit of
this thing here, like the little plastic thing here, this is, if you see on the border, I see in Quebec sometimes, if you see that little plate here, that is essentially the US-Canada border. And it's literally nothing that prevents you from going from one place to another. So this is what I'm referring to by the non-existent border. It's not a physical border. It's like a virtual border, if you will. It's not even enforced there. So obviously you can see what you mean by that. And I also have a picture as well too.
Leniency here if you're just nudging the border by a few centimetres, or if you're on that side, a couple of inches. But while I was setting up my camera here, the police turned up, lights flashing, to move along those bikers you saw earlier, who were admiring the view from the other side of the road. It all seemed in good spirits, but they had crossed the border.
Well, the library is part on the Canadian side, part on the American side. But you stay on Canadian side, you stay on the sidewalk, and you go through the front door, and it's permitted.
My brother once told me that, I remember my brother once told me that if you're at this library, at this specific library, obviously this particular library is a smack between both countries. So this side of the fence is on the left side, that's Canada. On the right side, that's United States. If you were to exit the door, if you want to exit the library from this door in particular, this one here, there is a US agent, like a border patrol here, who's gonna ask you for your passport. So you can't leave the library from all directions. There are some doors that are in the United States, some doors that are in Canada. So if you're in the United States, obviously you can go through this door. But again, if you want to leave to the Canadian side of things, then you will meet the Canadian border control guys, just the side of things. And also one thing about this particular town is that when I was working for the phone companies there, this side, this down in particular is called Stansted. It was also being known as Rock Island. That's the previous name. But if you take a phone in Rock Island and you want to make a phone call to Derby Lane, which is in the United States, is considered a local phone call. I'm going to show you that in a second here. I'm going to show that in a second. This is too funny to be true, but it is true. You can locally call the United States from Canada at this specific location. Local calling guide. What's the, so it's obviously 1819. What's the NXX and NP? What's the NXX? That location is that 876, I believe. Rock Island. Oh my goodness, I'm good. I still remember all that crap. That's good. So if you want to take a look at this is a website. Sometimes I spend my time in there, localcallingguy.com. It allows you to find the local prefixes of your location. So if you're in Rock Island, which is basically Stansted, Quebec, you can locally call Derbyline, VT, Ayrscliff, Quebec, North Hadley, Quebec, and Sherbrooke, Quebec. But Derbyline, VT, that's Vermont. I want to take a look at this Vermont guy here. So obviously, if you're in Vermont, in Derbyline, Vermont, you can call locally to Rock Island, VT, QC. I want to see I want to see Emerson, which is another site I'm going to talk about later on. Emerson, Franklin Town. It's 204 427. Just want to see. I never seen those, but I want to double check. So 204 427. Come on, honey. Okay, so Dominion City. Oh, that's the old name. That's good. So it's obviously at MTS. Can they call? Oh no, they can't call like. Oh, maybe Emerson. No, it doesn't leave the city. It stays in Canada. Anyways, I just found it interesting. I'm just gonna pull the video feedback in. So
The street, there's a sidewalk on the Canadian side. So back years ago, it was tolerated that people on the American side could cross over and walk on the sidewalk. So, basically it's a little dangerous to walk on the side of the road. And now today, well, it's not tolerated no more. I think the rules hasn't changed much, but they're more enforced. When you cross, they ask you more questions than they used to, years ago. Before, you went through the border and you knew most of the custom officer, and they used to wave to you,
In 1783, this section of the Canada-US border was set at the 45th parallel, a line of latitude. Slightly inaccurate measurements were accepted by both countries. So it was locked in. But as for this specific road, there are local stories about drunk surveyors and pranks, but no one really knows.
So Tom Scott, very interesting. He was made. Look at this. Look, you can give him a follow. Tom Scott. He makes good engineering videos. Fun. But basically, this is like a location that when you look at this, you go like, oh my goodness, is that a border? Yeah. So this is a border between the United States and Canada. You don't see any fans, you don't see nothing. It's just a street. And we're gonna show another location that is you're gonna just jump right ahead. Still Quebec right now. This is called Wallace Pond. I used to go swimming there, by the way. So this is one of my favorite places, my favorite lakes in Quebec. So if you ever get the chance to go there, make sure that your cell phone works with roaming, because you'll get no cell phone service at all. You will get all the cell phone service from AT&T, but not from Telus, not from Bell, and it's clearly not Rogers. Rogers is like out of the picture in that location. So this is from at the same this specific location, Wallace Pond, is I believe like 40-50 miles from Stansted that we saw earlier. I think it's like 50 miles east, something like that. Anyways, it's very close. This is in the area of what they call in Quebec the Eastern Townships, which is essentially all English British settlements that were, when the British settled down in Canada, especially in Quebec, they use those areas, which is the southern east side of Quebec, and they call the English the Eastern Townships, because the French used another system for agricultural purposes. So in the English that used townships, well, the French use another system. So what's in this area they call the Eastern Townships, just a sort of thing. But this is in Quebec still. if I ever go to that lake, it's that the water is like it's almost like you're stepping on gold. It's very cool. It's very cool. It's very nice, and you can also picnic and. But bring your cell phone. Make sure it works in the United States, otherwise you will not get cell phone service in Canada. Um, I heard that in this particular lake, when it freezes, there's a lot of drug smuggling that happens across that bridge when it freezes. There's a lot of skidoos and dogs who go across the bridge across that lake and they smuggle drugs. That's what I heard from people over there. And this lake, I want to show it to you. Another, and if you see there, this little border here, this is Highway 141 here, and this is what it looks like. So this is Highway 140. So this is the exact border between the United States and Canada. So that little sign that I was talking about on the previous video from Tom Scott, they have this little, that yellow sticker there, which basically tells that you're in Canada, in the United States. This is what we talk about. They say that this one is orange, not yellow. But basically, this is what it looks like. You're in Canada. This is the actual border. What's on the yellow line? That's the actual border. You can walk through it. You can walk through it. You can walk through it. In fact, this is the road in Canada. So this is Quebec 141. And this is the border with the United States. I'm going to show that to you what it looks like on a bigger picture. So 41 and BT Canada BT, I believe it's Oh yeah, I think I found it. Yeah, I'm gonna show that to you what it looks like on my side. Have some fun. So this, my friend, is the get out of there. So this is what it looks like, the little border between the United States and Canada. Oop. This is Highway 141. That's in Quebec, by the way. So what you're looking at right now is essentially this side here. There's not a lot, like probably 20 feet. See? Not a lot. So this is what you're looking at right now. Is the border between the United States and Canada. Cool, eh? The non-existent border. That's what I'm referring to by non-existent border, is that it's assumed it's a border. But there's not really a border at all. It's just like plain gone the bushes. And yeah, over there's a little fence on there. You can just jump through it and you're in the United States. That's well-spawned in Canada. So when people are talking about well-spawned, when people are talking about Roxham Road and all those locations that were so heavily publicized and pushed by the mainstream media, these are essentially you have to think that they're like 10,000 of little Roxham roads, and that's go through a question because Quebec is the province that receives most of the illegal aliens within Canada. So no wonder why Francois Legault is so mad at this whole situation. Not that they want to deport people, and that's not the point, but the illegal immigration is causing a lot of problems within Quebec because of situations like this. Because the warmer climate within Quebec allows this thing to happen. Okay, because this here, I think it's in Vermont. I believe it's in Vermont. Yes, Vermont. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Or just jump a little 2 provinces back west. This is Emerson, Manitoba. And I have a few slides about Emerson specifically because when I first heard about this specific town, I was watching some news and everything. And I came across this video from the Communist Broadcast Corporation. And I couldn't find this video in particular, but basically there was this, we can say, the bias from the Communist Broadcast Corporation when they have somebody crossing at -50 up in the farm, up in the field, crossing from United States to Canada, and there was some journalists on the Canadian side basically grading this guy, saying, "Welcome to Canada. You haven't done any checks whatsoever." I think it was paying for the show. I don't trust. Well, you should never trust the CBC at this point, right? Or Radio Canada, the French side of CBC. Okay, but it was so one-sided, it was repulsive. In the other hand, what I've seen here, I couldn't find that clip specifically because I want to show you the double standard. But anyways, but I found 2 or 3 clips about Emerson, Manitoba. This is basically, I want to show you to you Emerson, Manitoba. Emerson, Manitoba. Look at the maps here. Okay, so I want to show you this. So this is Emerson, Manitoba. All right. So you got United States here on this side on the fence, and on the north side you got Manitoba, Emerson. So basically what it means is that if you want to smuggle people from one side to the other, you can cross the river here, right? You can cross the river here, but most importantly, this particular border location is sitting between, so on this side we have, on this side we have North Dakota, but in here we have Minnesota, right? So this is what it looks like, and I want to show you a little clip about specifically about Emerson, which is quite unique. Oh, I know what happened with the videos. That's what didn't work in the first place, because I moved the location of those videos when re-added. I'm gonna learn the hard way, I guess. Video file, and I'm gonna show you Emerson, the new frontier.
We've never seen so many people cross this border ever in the dead of winter, in the severe weather. It's unthinkable why they would even try, and they are definitely putting their lives at risk.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, and the gangs, and
they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the vets for the people who live there. That was too funny. That was too easy. Sorry.
the drugs. We're getting them out.
In the Trump era of American politics, immigration has never been far from the headlines.
And refugees coming into our country from certain countries.
But while most attention is focused on the US's southern border with Mexico, its northern border with Canada has emerged as the latest international immigration flashpoint.
Get lost.
Canada has put out the welcome mat for refugees.
Maybe we...
I'm going to spare you some Justin Trudeau drama.
Canada had a fear of being jailed or deported by a Trump government.
You don't deserve to see the Trudeau. Not anymore.
The Canadian town of Emerson, population just 650, has become the first stopping off point for migrants making that journey, seeking refuge in a society they perceive as more welcoming than Trump's America. More than 1,000 migrants have been caught making the journey by Canadian police in the first 3 months of 2017. That's more than the whole of last year.
We're driving south on 6th Street in the town of Emerson, and 3 blocks down we'll come to another dike, and the other side of that dike is the United States of America and the small town of Noyes, Minnesota, which a lot of the border jumpers have been crossing.
And also one thing is that Minnesota is one of those blue states, those Democrat-run states. So you got North Dakota, who that is definitely red state, Republicans red state, and just like on the east side, you got Minnesota, which is a Democrat-run blue state, like California. So that's why those illegal aliens they come from that side of the border, right in it's which is right through Emerson. If I look at the map here, which I'm going to show you again, noise is right here. So that's Minnesota. So there's a higher chance that you're gonna go through from Minnesota than North Dakota here, right? Just keep watching.
This is Doug Johnston, a local politician and a volunteer firefighter who's been helping the town deal with the migrants.
Normally, both countries have respect, but the respect's gone out the window here.
And this is the actual border
This is the actual
post.
border. Period.
And so the folks who are coming in from the US, it's the fields behind you.
Sometimes, yes, and different fields they use.
So welcome to the United States border with Canada. Just farmland. Just a bunch of farms. That's what it is. And if you look at my presentation, this if you look at my intro picture, what I was showing, that specific picture, is in fact a location in Alberta, I believe. And it's just farmland, like this little tiny pole, like an official border, like this is Canada, this is US. Welcome to Canada. Feel free to go. So that's a shame.
In the middle of March, a large group of refugees, many of them from Somalia, were found sheltering from drastically low temperatures in an empty barn.
They were all found in this building here, 19 of them huddled in there with a 16-month-old child and a mother and a pregnant mother. We picked them up, put them in a handy van, and put them in our fire trucks, and then took them to the Canada Border Services Agency. This all took place in a storm, and they were lucky that somebody saw it. It's all just about trying to help people. Our choices are very limited. They have to be brought into the warmth. The government will deal with them at a later date when all the medical problems are off the slate, I guess.
We spoke to Mohammed from Mogadishu, who after being detained in Florida and set for deportation by a judge, managed to make it to Canada in late March.
Deportation. So those guys are coming at the time the video was filmed. They were deported from the United States. And they're going to Canada to escape that. So, and also one thing I just want to talk in particular, this is just illegal immigration, right? Like illegal aliens going across the border, right? Illegally. Because this thing is illegal, right? You can't just go in there. Like if you're a tourist, if I want to go to the United States, I will take my passport and say, hey, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to New Hampshire. Where are you going? I'm going to Texas, yada, 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 yada. You're entering the country legally through the border entry, which is the Border Control Services, right? That is what expected, right? Those guys just jumped right in this inexistent border, as you saw, right? And there's a bazillion places like this. Also, another thing is that those people who are in the United States, who are basically saying and thinking that they're going to move to Canada because they want to escape a big bad orange guy, I will definitely, and I'm very happy to say to those guys, better off save money and stay in the United States because we're going to get rid of Justin Trudeau and her criminal friends very soon. So don't waste your time. Stay in the United States. But anyways, that's just a thought. I have to say it.
I was expecting it was not like to detain or jail me, to treat me like a criminal.
Saying his family back home have been threatened by the extremist group Al-Shabaab, he endured temperatures that can cause frostbite and death to avoid being deported.
Well, that journey was horrible. We were frozen. You can't feel your hands.
We've had fingers lost and frostbite and all kinds of things happen to these people.
In the winter, we can go all the way down to minus 50. When they're crossing into minus 50 temperatures, the thing is, we got to worry about body parts being lost because your skin freezes in less than 10 seconds at that temperature.
This is Jackie Rayner, a cafe owner in Emerson, who understands the catch-22 many refugees find themselves in.
I would have grabbed my kids months ago and ran with the threats that they're getting from Trump in other countries. Like, they don't want to go back to where they're from. Trump's threatening them that they're all getting deported. You run.
However, local reception is mixed, with others such as Joanne Keeler concerned that without coming in legally, the required vetting needed to keep Canadians safe doesn't happen.
We don't want any illegal immigrants in our country. We don't know what their background's like or nothing. At least if they're processed, you know if they have a criminal record, you know if they're a good or a bad person. So, like I say, the legal way is the right way.
For now, with almost no barriers along most of the border, migrants are likely to keep coming to what they perceive to be a kinder society in Justin Trudeau's Canada.
Yep. And they need to be deported. That's my thought. So this is how we're dealing with now, guys. We got an influx of illegal aliens that are going to go to the United States. It's a shame, just because of Justin Trudeau's incompetence, right? So it's a bummer. Another thing in particular about that specific location within the United States is that this is border in particular. They had a lot of media attention. It's almost like Roxham Road in Manitoba, right? Because in Quebec they have Roxham Road, Quebec. All mainstream media was jumping out of that. But this is just one tiny bit of location. Like, nothing prevents anybody from, let's say, mosquitoes in minus 50 to cross the border, right? Which is a shame. I'm gonna show a clip from the Communist Broadcast Corporation. It's not too long, but just fair game here. Just a second here.
He's loading up with clothes, blankets, and food. JP Venegas has made the trip from Winnipeg to Emerson many times, picking up people who have walked over the border.
I did that several times for numerous refugee claimants.
A former refugee from Chile, he's now senior manager with Winnipeg's Interfaith Immigration Council. He's taking supplies to Emerson to help deal with a flood of asylum seekers.
15 years ago, I was in the same shoes of these people, so I was crossing the border from the States, coming to Canada.
I love his douche jets.
1 hour south of Winnipeg, Emerson has seen hundreds of mostly African asylum seekers in the past year.
African asylum seekers like Somalia.
He's loading up with clothes, blankets, and food. Someone who walks Winnipeg, Emerson has seen hundreds of mostly African asylum seekers in the past year, particularly since the fall, as many say it's getting harder to claim refugee status in the U.S. Under international convention, someone who walks over the border can legally make a refugee claim in Canada. Last weekend, in bitter cold, 22 people did, forcing volunteers in town to open an emergency shelter.
Of Emerson Franklin Municipality.
Today, the town made a new deal with Border Services and RCMP.
They assured us that they will have the manpower to handle influxes of refugees.
So what about security? All those people coming over that famously undefended border. Legally, the RCMP can't stop them, but say they are arresting them.
Those people are identified, searched, screened, those types of.
They're doing their job, for real. And those guys from those Mounties doing their job. That is very obvious. I don't know.
Things, then they're taken to CBSA where their processes take place too.
At the ports of entry, we are well positioned to deal with the traffic that comes through.
At the doors of entry.
People have been turned back. Mohammed Mualim did get through last weekend. He's thankful to the community.
We really appreciate them. They also helped us. And they welcomed us. They give us food to eat. They give us blankets because they put us inside the car too.
Yeah, and this is what I was, as I mentioned, I couldn't find this exact clip from the CBC in particular, but the CBC, when it comes to illegal immigration, they're showing this caring vision of doing things like we've been taken care of, we're being greeted by a couple of awesome people, yada 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 yada, and that's what we see. We don't see if this guy is a criminal. We don't see the back history. This is one of the things that when you come to a country, like at some point of time, I wanted to move to the United States uh, because of this pandemic, right? I wanted to go to Florida, and I was checking, and I paid a whole, and I pay a course on how to move to United States, and it's significantly harder for as a Canadian to move to the United States from here because of that. But for them to come here, it's like okay, no problem. So the mainstream media is effectively um, underestimating the problem. Done. They're not doing their due diligence. They're not informing people how those things work. Because I can tell you, as an immigrant myself, the immigration process is a very rough thing, right? And it's not thing that I would recommend to anybody. Even moving to Alberta from another province, it's by definition consider what they call interprovincial immigration. The fact they're moving from one place to another, that's what happens. So I think that the CBC is downplaying the issue here by showing that we care and everything we're training. What they should be doing and should be talking about is how the situation has been under control, and all they have is a bunch of mountains over there saying taking everything control at the border at the door entry. But what happens at those uncontrolled locations like farmland? What happens there? Crickets.
Venegas is hoping that compassion continues.
Basically, they have nothing. Most of the people, they just come with clothes in their bags.
The expectation here is that it will only continue, particularly once the weather starts warming up, and so long as tensions towards immigrants and refugees remain in the south, and the border remains open here in the north.
This is a very well protected city. So base game Emerson, Manitoba here, you're gonna see all those towns here, like people. You can see like YouTube side of the things, like official border town, Emerson, Canada, Canadian border control, that sort of thing. And what I found surprising is that how the CBC is downplaying the fact that they're playing a double standard. Like the CBC is clearly playing a double standard. They seem to the CBC and the Liberals are portraying this vision of Canada. They're a welcoming place, which they are. But it's just that people are abusing the system, and it's just wrong. Just wrong. What we need is just a tighter control, because the guys from what we saw the CBC article video was that from the CBC clip is that the mountains are protecting the point of entry, but a farm is not a point of entry. So what it uses I mean, unless you got a sniper, and good knows in Manitoba there's no hills over there, right? What are you gonna put your sniper on, right? Whatever. Put some traps, some bear traps. I don't know. Get creative, guys. But nothing will prevent those people from getting in. So, and also the CBC is portraying this idea that we are welcoming, yada yada yada. But what tells me that this guy Mohammed has murdered someone in the United States, and that's the reason he got deported. And we don't know this thing in Canada, right? Even the fact of moving to another province, because I basically immigrated twice, like from another country to Canada 20 years ago, and then from another province down to Alberta. That is considered interprovincial immigration by definition. So you have to be prepared to be able to work here, be able to have your sustain yourself, right? That's a requirement if you want to go to one place or another. So those guys are essentially, those illegals are coming here to Canada in the hopes that somebody will help in the hand. But we don't know their history. We don't know what they're doing. Like in this in a video, there's a lady in Emerson who was exactly outlining just that. Is that what's their history? What they're done in the United States? We don't know it, right? It's make believe, guys. Make believe. So what's going on? What can we do about it? And I'm going to show some solutions here. What I've been told. So political action. So some provinces now, they're starting to move now and collaborating with the province down south. I mean, the United States provinces down south. States down south, there's no provinces in the US. Who I'm talking here. To collaborate together and to make the border more secure. I heard that Danielle Smith, she was trying to put drones and collaborated with Montana, which is a good thing. I'm curious. I'm just checking here if Danielle Smith is pushing the idea that she's gonna put drones on the southern border by Milk River, right? Or some places like that. What tells me that David Eby, which is a complete leftist radical, what tells me that this guy is not going to do anything? So what I think is going to happen is that the more conservative leaning provinces like Nova Scotia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, they're going to work together, but potentially to protect the border, because Justin Trudeau is not doing her job. She is not doing her job, right? And because of that, because the border control is federal jurisdiction, right? But because she's not doing her job, then Danielle Smith, she has to do whatever Justin Trudeau's job's doing, right? So I think we're getting to that direction. I had some news about it as well. Also, another thing is that if you're willing to start a petition that can be sponsored by the conservatives, I think I'm going to do a petition to protect the border to some degree. That would be fantastic. Call your MPs, especially if they're conservatives, because the conservatives right now are the ones who are pushing the ball on this thing. Don't count on your NDP. There are a bunch of sellouts at this point. You can raise awareness if you want, but I don't count on them. So bet on the conservatives, right? By the way, and don't consider the liberals as your friend. They're a bunch of loonies now at this point. And so give them a call if you're conservative. I'm going to look at the website right away. I'm going to show you what it looks like so you can have a good understanding what this site looks like. People tell me I sound angry when I'm talking about those things. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but I want to show you something. So this is the list of the NPs in Canada. That's on the slides, by the way. So current members of parliament. So if you want to know what MPs are in the province, like in this case, I'm in Alberta, right? So these are the MPs who are who you can see their lineage. Like most of them are conservatives, right? There are like 3 who are not conservative. Okay, so you got 2 NDPs and 2 liberals, but all of them are conservative. So you might, if you're in Alberta, you're in luck. You can send a call to anybody of those guys. Just a shout. Give them a call. Say, hey, I want this thing to be protected. What can you do about it? Yeah. Talk to them. Give them a call. Give them a phone message, a phone call. You can actually, their phone numbers are listed. And this is public information. I'm not doxing anybody. This is public information. They're MPs, right? They work for us, right? We pay those guys, supposedly, right? So you got your numbers here, where contact information, where they are, the phone number. It's all the information. It's all public domain. Not inventing anything. Give me a call. Also, one thing in particular, if you live in the US border or in the vicinity of the US border, my suggestion is to install, and this is something I was told by a friend of mine, is to install night vision cameras. And you will see a lot of illegal aliens going through the night. And especially at -40, they're going to be like lit red. You cannot miss them. So you can see them spotting going through across the border and document the whole thing and expose it on social media to raise awareness, to say, hey, we got 10 people in one night going across one place to another. We got 15 people going in Emerson. We got 5 people going from one place to another. This thing is documented. So what we need to do right now, I think the ball is on our court now. We need to start documenting those things and exposing that on social media. And I think that I saw some people doing that as well. I think that I saw a video from the pleb, and I found that very surprising. There was this guy in Quebec, a bunch of Indians. They're showing on Instagram now, and they're offering their service for Indians because they speak Punjabi, I guess. I don't know. And they were selling the immigration process and immigration services from Canada to the United States on Instagram with their phone number, wide open. I don't wonder how many calls they get, but they must have some people from CSIS or the border control guys there for that number, right? I don't know. The same, but we need to expose the insanity. Raise awareness. Like I talk about illegal aliens. I'm not going to shy from calling that illegal aliens because they are illegal aliens. What tells me that those people are not saints? We don't know them. We're going to vet them. I don't know. So we need to grow a pair of balls at this point now. So it's going to be a collaborative effort between exposing what they're doing and raise awareness and calling your MPs. That's going to be the ball game. I want to show a video from Daniel Smith. And when I have this idea of posting this video, I already have these slides in there. But just given how fast things are moving right now with the whole situation, and Daniel Smith getting involved in this, I think at this point that I will say that what's saying here might be changed over time because it's a situation that is evolving very fast because all that information that I have about Daniel Smith doing something wasn't even on the cards now. I'm going to show a video that I got from CPAC here.
Well, with her thoughts on all of this, we're now happy to be welcomed back to the program, the Alberta Premier, Danielle Smith. Premier, thank you for making the time.
My pleasure. Nice to see you, Michael.
And you. Listen, I was reading some of the earlier comment that you gave on the tweet, or I guess the post that was put out by the incoming president on Truth Social, because you describe his concerns about drugs.
Truth Social. They look at Truth Social now. They know this thing was on Twitter as well, too, right? Just saying.
And illegal migrants as being legitimate. So I'm wondering if you could build on that, because I think for many Canadians, when they hear concerns about illegal drugs, illegal migrants, they think for the United States it's mainly an issue coming from Mexico. But from what you know of what's happening along our shared border, just what is coming from Canada into the United States?
Well, look, we've got a very serious opioid and fentanyl crisis in our province.
Yeah, and that's another thing, is that I just read an article somewhere. I kind of had to find and double check what's on the clip, but basically the west border between Canada and the United States was used to smuggle a lot of, I won't say the drug, but anyways. And now the drugs are being made in the country. So I just want to find here. Oh, and this is from the CBC, by the way. Criminal networks are shifting from imports to Canada made products. So they're not importing the product; they're making themselves here in Canada, right? You see all those pills in there, just to kill every child in a city. That's how deadly this thing is. You ever seen a fentanyl abuser in consumer? It's bad. Anyways.
So we're seeing record numbers of deaths and have for a number of years. And we know that there are components coming in from British Columbia and the United States and then going back out the other way again. We've got to address that issue, not only for our own people, but now, of course, because the Americans have identified that too. We also see that with the open borders policy that the federal government has had for the last couple of years, I mean, 1.8 million people came into Canada in 2023, and the Americans have seen a doubling of the number of contacts at the Canadian border. So they're beginning to see that illegal migrants are using Canada as a staging area to get into the United States. We have to take the Americans' concerns at face value, address them if we're going to be able to get on to talk about our mutual interests on trade.
Mm-hmm. But is this 25% tariff threat justified, or do you see it as basically a negotiating tactic?
Well, look, I mean, I take the U.S. president, the incoming president, seriously. He's very clear about the things that are irritating to him when it comes to his relationship with Canada. He's irritated by China using increasingly Mexico, but in the past it's been Canada as a staging area to get cheap products into the United States and hollow out their manufacturing sector. He's been very frustrated by immigration. He's been frustrated by fentanyl. He has been frustrated by the fact that Canada isn't pulling its weight in meeting its 2% NATO defense.
Oh, that's another thing from Justin Trudeau. He is unable to meet the NATO obligations. I mean, there's a bill to pay, and this is the agreement. These are the rules. These are the rules of engagement. If don't do it, get out. And basically, I can understand Donald Trump's position. I mean, this guy is a businessman. What do you expect? Somebody is not doing his job, you just kick them out. Like if I hire somebody who's not doing this job, I will give you a chance, but he doesn't. I'm just gonna kick them out and just give you some notice and say, hey, back to things, leave. Right?
Spending targets. So I would say that those things, that if that's what he is leading with, saying that the condition of having fruitful trade negotiations means solving these things, it's up to us to pressure the federal government to solve these things.
Mm-hmm. What would that kind of tariff do to the Alberta economy, though?
Oh, devastating. I mean, I think every one of us realizes how devastating it would be, because it's not just the tariffs. You also have a federal government that is piling on a variety of different policies that make life more expensive. The carbon tax is anticipated to go up to 61 cents per liter when it comes to gasoline and diesel.
And it's gonna jump to 65 cents, and all those people who are so happy to get to $250 from debt, which is basically at this point, the guy's gonna have to recover someone. Is they gonna free government for more taxes. So I think those guys are dumb. No, they're not.
That'll make everything so much more expensive than the United States. The capital gains tax changes. So if you've got businesses making decisions about where they're going to invest to be able to get access to a favorable market, we're going to see all of those dollars heading south. And so I'm very concerned about the 25% tariff, not just on oil and gas, but on our agri-food products, on our forestry products, on our increasingly robust manufacturing sector. We have to take this seriously. We have to address these things that are
87%. That's a huge chunk. I'm not sure if the oil that's being exported to the United States will have tariffs on there. I don't know that information, but when you have Stephen Gibault on the other side trying to rip us off economically, on the top of that we have Donald Trump saying that they're going to impose a tariff of 25%. So that puts the Canadian economy to a very precarious position, which basically the energy sector in Canada is basically a cash cow for the Canadian financial government, right? So it's pathetic.
Causing the trade tension.
Mm-hmm. Now, we did hear from Pierre Poilievre today. He had a news conference here in Ottawa, and I want to play a part of what he had to say for you and for people at home. Take a listen to this.
The Prime Minister has to put aside partisanship and, in the spirit of Team Canada, cancel his energy cap, which would see Alberta and Saskatchewan produce 35% less energy at a time when we need those jobs. It is our biggest industry and our biggest export.
Now, for Canadians who are perhaps more concerned about greenhouse gases, that statement might be a bit jarring. But
yeah, but the carbon tax is at this point losing so much ground that people are essentially okay. An expert. I'm a huge cheese eater. I like cheese for some reason. I like cheese. And usually that pack of cheese is back like 3 years ago. It was like $6. I went to the store. It was $11.
But I'm wondering what your reaction is to what we heard from Mr. Poilievre. Also, how you think removing the emissions cap would perhaps help Canada forge a working relationship with the incoming Trump administration.
Well, look, Pierre Poilievre is absolutely right. We know that the emissions cap being proposed is so aggressive on such a short time frame. The only way to reach it is by shutting in production. We think at least 1 million barrels per day by 2030 and 2 million barrels per day by 2035. You can't go to the Americans and say, hey, we're your solution to energy security. At the same time, back home, you're crushing the very industry that is going to provide that security. So I would say that one of the first things that Trudeau should do if he wants to demonstrate good faith, if he wants to demonstrate it is a Team Canada approach, and he understands how important energy security is to the Americans and energy affordability is to the Americans, that he would take that off the table. Well, one other thing that the incoming president has said is that he wants gasoline and diesel prices to go down.
Yeah, two things. One, Donald Trump is not going to bargain with Justin Trudeau. He's a loser. He is a pathetic loser. And Donald Trump, as a business guy, will not deal with this guy. He's a loser. What do you expect? I mean, if I'm a business guy, and I will not do the same thing to him. So I think all what's going to happen in the next couple of months is that I think Donald Trump is kind of waiting for Justin Trudeau to be ejected, and then he's going to, if it's demands of the 25%, if the border situation is being addressed, which I doubt it will be, but not to the extent he wants. At some point in time, I think that, Donald Trump is not going to sit and bargain with Trudeau because Trudeau has demonstrated his incapacity of dealing with money, with capital, with morals in general. See the trucker convoy at this point. And basically, at this point, we can say, hey, we can't deal with this guy anymore. He's a loser. We're not deal with the next. I remember a while ago I saw an article from the Western Standard. I believe I'm gonna have to find an article there, but basically says that the oil and gas industry is not very keen to work with a federal government that is imposing taxes and taxes that way and put a production cap on the simple product they're making, which is oil and gas and oil and gas byproducts like asphalt and all those things. They're basically waiting for the liberal government to collapse. And that's the situation we're in right now. Donald Trump is doing the same thing on this end. He's waiting for Donald Trump to lose and to be humiliated in a very spectacular way before even thinking about Canada at this point. So I'm not saying that Danielle Smith's not doing a good thing or not. She's doing an amazing job at this point, but is money that will be unfortunately wasted at this point. But let's see how it goes.
He certainly won't be able to do that if he adds a 25% tariff to oil and even to natural gas. We want to make sure that that is communicated well so that we can use that as a point of negotiation. But I don't think that we get to that discussion until we address the things that are causing the irritation to the Americans in the first place. I think we've got to take the Trump administration at face value when they say they want a more secure border, they want to stop the fentanyl, they want to stop the illegal migration, they want us to meet our 2% NATO commitment. Those are the things we've got to deal with first.
Mm-hmm. Now, it just so happens, and I realize this was planned before Mr. Trump took to Truth Social last night, but it just so happens you introduced a motion today to push back on those emission caps from Ottawa, and it's going to happen before that national phone call tomorrow. Do you think that kind of legislative approach is going to have an impact on the kind of Team Canada spirit that the Prime Minister is asking for?
Well, look, I mean, we have to defend the interests of Albertans, and $120 billion worth of our oil and gas product goes across the border into the United States. It's the lion's share of our cross-border relationship with the Americans. We've got some 4 million barrels per day of production that is going down to the U.S. It's a heavy oil, and it can be used to produce a number of products. It's the main thing that their refineries need in the Gulf Coast. It allows for them to rely on us rather than rely on Venezuela or Iran for their product. They need it for their strategic petroleum reserve.
Venezuela.
We think that it's a responsible thing to do, to send the message to Trudeau that there's no point in going forward with an emissions cap that is going to result in production losses, not only now because of our relationship with the United States, but it's unconstitutional. And we're prepared to assert that. We're certainly not going to put Alberta's interests aside in having negotiations as part of the team. What I would ask is for Trudeau to put his terrible policy aside.
And I don't think Danielle Smith wants to bargain with Trudeau and they're a bunch of loonies in Ottawa at this point. I mean, they are so stubborn right now that whatever happens right now in the oil gas industry, I know people who work in the oil patch, myself, and she said that on multiple occasions in town hall meetings. She was like, yeah, they're dealing with the federal government, with the Trudeau government not by choice because they're there, right? But she knows on the back of her head that this just like begging or waiting for the Trudeau government to collapse. And then that doesn't necessarily that's going to be better with Poilievre, but it's going to be a little more easier. And I think that a lot of those provinces, those conservative provinces, I know that, like for example, in Nova Scotia, they won a conservative government over there. Tim Houston regained his party now. So he was the incumbent Conservatives now. They regained power again with a significant majority now. And they're doing the same thing. They don't see Justin Trudeau as a player now. So in all the discussions, it's being done within the provinces now. So when Justin Trudeau gets ejected, then things are gonna roll a little more easy, a little more smoother now.
In taking a Team Canada approach, and that's what I'll be talking to him about when we all meet as a group tomorrow.
We were all in Halifax for the Council of the Federation when the premiers were one by one saying there was not enough consultation with Ottawa. You're now going to have this consultation. Do you think, given the challenges of the first Trump administration, this is the type of thing that needs to be formalized at an annual, biannual meeting of the First Ministers?
Well, look, we've been asking to have a formal First Ministers Conference for some time because we've seen, as we've been watching what is happening in the United States, we've seen how much the federal government has neglected its area of strategic defense and strategic infrastructure. If you look at the communiques coming out of the premiers, and remember, we come from all party stripes. If you look at the most recent communiques coming out, it was very much focused on what our relationship might look like with the United States if there was a change of government. We've been alive to this for some time. And it's disappointing that the Prime Minister hasn't asked to meet with us sooner. I'm glad that Doug Ford is now at the helm of the Council of the Federation, and he's managed to secure a meeting that we've been trying for some time. And I hope that it's a productive one, but it is going to require a little bit of soul searching on the part of Justin Trudeau to understand what he has done to create the circumstances that we find ourselves in, make amends, reverse course on some policies, and get this relationship back on track.
Premier Danielle Smith and I have.
Yep. So that's what we're doing right now. We're essentially waiting until the Liberal government collapses on its own so we can rebuild this country again, which will be very fun to do, consider how much those people have destroyed the country, right? I mean, Trudeau and whatever. So I just want to show you these clips. It wasn't on my slides, but I think that if we're willing to be able to give an approach now, because now I see on social media now, on Twitter specifically, a very large pushback towards deportation. And I think at this point of time, we have to. I think that the rules of engagement have been set, and so this is how we're having to deal with that right now, right?
It says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect? Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there's. Families can be deported together.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million.
And how many people on here in Canada were essentially like 41 million people now? Out of those 41 million people, there are like estimated 5 million people who are illegal right now. Illegal aliens. Sometimes I feel bad for this situation because it's not the immigrants' fault. I mean, the federal government make a false promise to those Canadians, to those immigrants to move to this country. And I think that there's going to be like something that we need to discuss. But basically, the federal government was promising those things, that they will be safer, they will be happier with that work permit. I know people who are living on with a work permit here, with a visa permit, like a work visa permit, right? And they had to find a job here. But at the same time, a Canadian citizen who's trying to find a job can't find a job because of that, right? And also there was a language barrier too. I mean, many of them don't speak French or English in that regard, and most they speak English, right? So it's a disservice to the country doing this, right? So I think that the situation is there right now to move things ahead and push the debate now. And so we're talking about how many illegals they're supposed to leave the United States. They have 11 million. So just imagine if Canada goes from 41 million to 52 million, and they're all going to vote Liberal. So they're changing the dynamic of this country. So I want to show you something about the Canada as well too, because I'm basically done with my slides here. I just want to show you something. If you want to load me on Twitter, I just post some things on Twitter. Actually, this is my Twitter channel right now. Oh, I see my Twitter feed over there. Just a second. I'm just gonna post on the screen here. So if you follow me on social media right now, I'm just gonna. So I'm live here, so it's gonna show on Twitter now. But if you go to freedomcandor.com .net/podcast, you're gonna see all the media and social media like X, Rumble, YouTube, Telegram as well too. I would say that most of my streams now are being pushed by default on Rumble now because of freedom of speech, right? I got an email from Google saying that they're gonna take down another video as well. So censorship is real. So make sure to follow me on Rumble, on X as well. You can still go on YouTube if you want. And also subscribe to the newsletter as well. So if you go to freedomcalendar.net, the website, just subscribe to the newsletter. You're going to get the information there. Sometimes I post information when I'm really worried about. Otherwise, just follow me on Twitter, on YouTube as well, but mostly Twitter. And I'm very active on Twitter and on Rumble as well. Rumble will be my primarily delivery platform for all things that have to do with the podcast and stuff. Also, stay tuned for next week. There's going to be a lot of things going on, a lot of events going on in the city and other provinces, and in the province as well. Going to be working on some degree. So I got some phone calls to do after this. So just give it a shout, and thanks. So you can look it up at this if you want, and make sure to be there on social media so I can publish those things and have some fun in there. This is the link I was showing you about Montana and Daniel Smith trying to push this thing here, to push drones, which is interesting. She's going to fly drones on the southern border. Pretty cool. So don't forget to subscribe if you like this video. Just feel free to subscribe. Go to the Freedom Candor podcast website as well. Okay, just scan the QR code in here. Was going to freedomcandor.net/podcast with all the links for social media in there. It's pretty cool. So I would like to thanks for tuning in, guys. Max, by the way, and we'll keep in touch. It's been 1 hour and 42 minutes, which is amazing. I think all my clips last like 1 hour, just 1 hour and over and a half. I made these slides at 3:30 in the morning, so at this point, my energy level is going like this, So I think we'll go into that direction. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Just make sure to follow me on Twitter and on Rumble as well. Most of the events when we come, we're gonna be shown there as well too, and I'm working on 2 or 3 things as well as working with 2 or 3 things on top of a lot of my things I was doing on my time. So, and if you want to send an email e-transfer, if you want to like this content, you can send an email transfer to e-transfer@freedomcandor.net. Really helps me cover the expenses of the show, especially with that weakened Canadian dollar because of Justin Trudeau, right? We never know. So thanks for coming, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.